Hey everyone, my name is Riley, and in this video, I will be showing you how you can use diagrams.net, also known as draw.io. I will show you everything that you need to know, from how to navigate the draw.io dashboard, how to find and add the correct shapes, how to connect them all up into a flowchart, how to change the colors, add text, and even how you can access the template section to choose the best template for you. To get started with draw.io, head over to drawio.com and it's going to take you over to this page. From here, we can click on Start, and it's then going to ask us where do we want to save the diagrams that we create to. So we can choose if we want to save these to Google Drive, OneDrive, your device, or any of these other options. I want to store these on my device, so I'm going to select device, and then we can choose if we want to create a new diagram or open an existing diagram. I'm going to click on create new diagram, and in here, it's going to give us all of these different templates that we can choose from. However, before we go ahead and choose one of these, we first of all need to create the file name. So for the file name, I'm just going to save this as test diagram, and then the file is going to be saved as testdiagram.draw.io. We can also choose between different files that you want to save this as, whether you want to save this as a draw.io file, a PNG, SVG, or HTML. I'm going to leave this as a .draw.io. Then we can go down and we can choose from one of these diagram templates. We have basic templates that we can see right here, and these are the most common and most used. But we also have engineering diagrams, we have networking diagrams, and if there is a type of diagram you are specifically looking for, then we can use the search bar to search this. Let's search for a flowchart. We can click on enter, and all of these flowcharts are now going to load up. So you can select a diagram and then click on create, and it's going to drop that diagram into your chart. Or alternatively, we can just start with a blank template. If I go back in, create a new diagram and have this as blank, then we can start with a blank diagram right here. So now we are loaded into draw.io. The first thing that I want to mention is you can adjust the theme right here, whether you want this light or dark, by clicking on this moon icon in the top right corner. We can set this to light right here, or alternatively, we can set this to dark. I personally prefer dark, but for visibility in this video, I'm going to switch this to light. Over here, we have the diagram settings. So first of all, we can go into view, and we can basically set this grid up. First of all, we can completely deactivate the grid and have this as just a blank page. Or alternatively, we can turn the grid on. We can play around with the settings in this area, and you can turn these up or down to get different sized squares. So you can see those squares are very small, and if we zoom in, they're going to be a lot bigger. We can also change the color of the page by clicking right here, and then we can select the color we want this to be using this color selector in the bottom left corner. Let's set this to blue. As you can see, the page and the lines are now going to be blue. But let's go back in and let's change this back to black. Perfect. We now have this set up. Another thing that we can set up here is currently this is on page view. So we have a limited parameter in where we can actually start drawing our flowchart. To get rid of this and turn this into unlimited space, we just turn the page view off. And now we can drag around and create flowcharts as big as we like. Like we can basically zoom out forever, and we can also zoom back in. If you want to add a background color, we can do it in this area. So rather than just changing the lines, this is going to change the entire background color. If I set this to red and apply, we can see the background color is going to change. Let's turn this off for now. Over here on the left hand side, this is where we can start grabbing tools and shapes that we will be using to create our flowchart. The default panel that is going to be opened up is general, and these are just the most common shapes that people use inside of draw.io. So we have things like arrows, rectangles, squares, circles, ovals, and other shapes that are very common. If we drag this up, we have a few other categories though. So we have miscellaneous, where we can see some more obscure but still very useful shapes. And then we have all of these other categories that are going to contain shapes within them. If you have a specific shape that you are looking for, but you don't want to flick through each of these categories, we can search for specific shapes up here at the top. Let's just search for a circle. We can enter that in, and all of the shapes that they have that resemble a circle are going to show up right here. To add a shape into your chart, simply click on the shape and drag it into your chart wherever you want to place it. Just like that, I now have this shape added in. We can adjust the size of this shape by using these buttons along the side. So we can click and drag outwards to make this shape bigger, or click and drag inwards to make this shape smaller. To adjust the rotation of the shape, we can use this icon right here. It's not going to be the most helpful shape to do this with a circle. So let's grab a square. We can once again drag this in. And then to rotate this shape, we just drag this around the edge, and then we can drag this to whatever rotation we want. Let's set it right there. To zoom in and zoom out, we can either use these magnifying glasses at the top, so we can click on the minus to zoom out, or the plus to zoom in, or you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and zoom out. To connect shapes to each other, we essentially have two options. If I just reset this square back to normal, we can either go to these arrows, so if we hover over the shape that you have, we can go to these arrows down the side, and it's going to give us different shapes that we can connect to. Now, it's very limited here, and it's only going to offer us these 4 shapes. However, if these are shapes you do want to use, for example, if I want to connect up another square, I can drop that in, and it's automatically going to connect up these 2 squares with an arrow. If I now move one of these squares, you can see the arrow is going to follow as these are connected up. If you want to break a connection at any time, all we have to do is click on the connection line, click on the backspace on your keyboard, and that is now going to be removed. To undo any changes, we can go up to this undo arrow in the top left corner, and that is going to undo that change. The second way that we can connect shapes to each other is if I just delete these, and let's add in a person. So we can search for a person right here. We can bring this in, maybe make this a little bit bigger. And to connect these 2 shapes to each other, all we have to do is go to one of the shapes. So the shape that you want the arrow coming from, we find that shape, and then you can see these little X's around the side. These are all of the points that we can connect shapes from. So if I select this X right here and drag out, you can see my arrow is going to come from the point that I selected. Let's just go in and delete that, and then we can do this again. So we click on that X, drag out, and we can only connect to this person where these X's are. Now this is pretty hard to see in this blue, but we have one right here in the middle, we have one on the arm, 3 on the head, 1 on the arm right here. So we can connect it to one of these points. And just like that, these shapes are now connected. So we can go ahead and move these around. So that is how you can add shapes and connect them up using this column on the left-hand side. Now you will notice that this panel on the right-hand side is going to change from if we have nothing selected like we do right now. And if we click on one of these shapes and have them selected, this right-hand side is now going to turn into a control panel for that shape. So up here, we can change what color the shape is, add a little bit of color to this. We can then choose how this shape is colored. So we can choose from like hatch, solid, dots, all of these different options right here. Let's just set this back to auto. We can choose if we want to add a gradient in. We can choose the direction of the gradient, the other gradient color. We can change the borderline on the outside. So if I go ahead and increase this, you can see this is going to get a lot bigger. And then we can also change the color of this line. So we can set this to black, and you can see that right there. Let's turn this off for now. We can choose the opacity of this shape. We then have these options to round the shape, to make the shape a sketch, to add a glass effect to the shape. And those are the style options right there. We can also flick across to text, and this is where we can adjust the text. Now, to actually add text to any shape, all we have to do is go to the shape and double click. And I can now start typing text in this shape. Now, it looks like this shape is rotated the wrong way. So let's just rotate this into the correct way. Then we can grab this arrow, and I actually want to connect it to this point now. There we go. So we have this shape in. We now have some text, and we can adjust the text on this right-hand side. So we can change the font right here. We can change if this is bold, italicized, underlined. We can change the alignment of this text. We can change the color. If we want to add a background color to the text, a border color to the text, that is how we can change the text right there. We also have a range. So this is if you want to bring shapes forward or bring shapes back. For example, if we have 2 shapes, this isn't the best example. If I just grab like a circle and drag this in, let's make this circle blue so it's more visible. If we have 2 shapes right here, well, this arrange tab is going to be very handy for if you want one shape behind the other. So we can see because I dragged the circle in after, it's going to be on top of the square. However, in arrange, I can send this to back, and now the square is going to be on top. So once again, if I want to change these round, I send the square to the back, and that circle is now on top. Using this panel, we can also flip shapes. So we can flip them horizontally and vertically. I mean, even if I click these, you won't be able to tell. And what we can also do is we can group shapes. So if we want to group shapes together, we can click and drag, and you can see we get this little box appearing. But we can select both of these shapes. So they are now both selected. And then we could group these together. If shapes are grouped and we move them around, you can see they are going to move together. So this is what grouping is. We can ungroup at any time using this button. We can also lock shapes using this arrange tab. So we can click on lock and unlock. And now if I try to make any changes to this shape, if I try to add some text, move this around, it's not going to budge until I go back in and unlock this shape. Up at the top, we basically have very similar options to what we have at the side. For example, this is going to change the color of the shape. So if I just go in and change this to like a blue color, that's going to change right there. We then have this option, which will allow you to change the line or the border of the color right here. So let's just reset this to normal for now, reset this back to how it was. This next tool is going to allow you to change the arrow. So right now, if I just go to drag an arrow right here, it's going to come across as a regular arrow. But if I go up here and change it to like this arrow, and I once again draw an arrow, you can see it's going to change how the arrow looks. It's the same for this line tool. It essentially just changes how the line is going to look and the type of line that we get. And then in here, we can add a few different tools. So using this plus icon, we can add in a rectangle. We can add in an ellipse. We can add in a note if you want to add a note. We can just double click and start typing. So most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Freehand is going to allow you to draw. So if I go to freehand right here, you can see I can now start drawing. I can choose the brush size or the thickness as well as the color. So if I set this to thick and red, we're now going to get a very thick red line. So you can draw right there, and that's what freehand is. We can then add images in. So we could go image and upload an image from your computer. We can go to templates. So this is how we can go back to the template gallery. If I click on templates and add a flowchart, we can add that flowchart in right there. And now that you have the hang of this, then you know that we can just click in. We can edit this text. We can drag things around. We can add different shapes into this and then connect them up in different ways, just like that. And you should now have a really good understanding of how this tool works. All we have to talk about now is how do we actually save this? Up in File, we just have all of the regular file settings, such as save, open a new project, open recent projects, and everything like that. So all we now need to do is, for some reason, this untitled again. So let's just save this back to test diagram. And then we can rename this. And then unsave changes, so we can just click in, save this file right here, and that file is now going to be saved. So that is my draw.io tutorial. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to smash that like button and tap that subscribe button. And until next time, take it easy.